Hi, everyone. I'm Mack McKelvey, and I'm joined today by hi, Heidi.
What up, Matt?
Heidi Keel, HK from Hottest Hades, Scottsdale.
He's Inferno, Mac. It is, we're sub 100 now, though.
Oh.
So, and the swimming pool is now like an 89 degrees when you go in it. So, and before anybody starts throwing shade at the bouginess, that's what you have in Arizona because it's so freaking hot. So,
Well, we are joined today by a very special guest, Alexander Stonehouse, the marketing director at Forj. Alex, thanks so much for joining us today and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you both for having me. Been looking forward to this.
And you're in the DC area, correct?
I am. Been in Washington, D.C. for coming up on 15 years now, which feels crazy to say. So born and raised in Milwaukee, but have lived a good chunk of my life here in Washington, D.C. now.
You're not a University of Wisconsin fan, are you?
I mean, historically, yes, but it's hard to keep track when you're not surrounded by other Wisconsin fans. So I keep more up to speed on the Packers than I do on the Badgers.
Our daughter went to University of Alabama and they played Wisconsin this.
Oh, I did see that
weekend. So yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Well, we don't need to talk about it. We can we'll just keep rolling. We'll keep rolling.
No
well, welcome. Love having you here. For folks that don't know you, do you mind just spending a couple minutes and giving a little bit of a sizzle reel on your background?
Yeah, absolutely. So I used to say that I've been in marketing for a decade, and the funny part is it's coming up on a decade and a half now. So that's a little bit fun and interesting. So I started in marketing fairly soon after I got out of college. Moved down to Washington, D.C. with plans to be a lawyer. I was a history major in undergrad, and the logical path of a history major is you either become a lawyer or a history professor or something. So I went as far as getting into law school. I applied, got in, was a few months out from starting that whole process. And I was like, I am dreading this and I haven't even started, which is probably not a great place to be in if you want to become a lawyer and go down that path. So from there, I had done a little bit of marketing work when I was in college and I really enjoyed it. So I transitioned from that and got my first role in marketing, actually on the marketing strategy team at the Washington Post, which was a really cool blend of the art and the science of marketing. So it was a lot of analytics, a lot of data, a lot of kind of optimizing what we were bringing to the market, but then also all the creative aspects that you'd associate with marketing. So that was a really great place to kind of get my feet wet and think about what marketing is, how all these companies work in this huge ecosystem. Like you have access to a ton of information and a ton of different companies when you work at a company that's that big. But what comes with a company that's that big is a lot of frustration. So there's a lot of people who are, I don't want to say blockers because they mean well, but it takes time to move things through the system. And just a really quick example of one of those is I had this, what I thought was a great idea at the time for an initiative to run this special campaign for the Washington Nationals during baseball season, where we do discounts, we get people to sign up for the paper, we do all this great stuff. And it was around them making the playoffs because they're having a great year here in DC. And so I submitted up to the upper floor, the big wigs up on the top floor in maybe July. And it got approved and sent back down for us to do it in November. And I was like, the season's done. It's over already. So while it was a very cool experience, I was like, I need to go somewhere where I can move quickly, where we can make optimizations by the day or by the week, not by the month or the year. And so from there, I moved over to an agency that was focused on social media marketing in the very early days of paid social media. So Facebook ads, Twitter ads, LinkedIn was just rolling out their paid advertising API. Instagram hadn't even done it yet. So it was very cool to be in that industry early on. And then from there, I've been basically in the startup world ever since. So I've worked at 3 different startups at various different stages, growth stages, and have really built the core of my career and what I'm really passionate about helping those types of companies basically go from where they are to different stages of their growth.
Okay, so it was a great intro, but there's just one piece missing from your intro.
Sure.
And I'm going to challenge you, put you a little bit on the spot because
Okay, please do.
We like to sum up our intros with just one quick statement.
Yeah.
And we call it the Real Housewives of SUM intro. And Heidi and I will do ours. So you'll get maybe inspired by that.
Yeah.
And then would love for you to right off the top of your head, throw yours down. Are you ready?
Yeah, let's go.
Okay. HK, you're up. You go first. I'll get in character.
I feel like I need a different entry point here. I'm going to try to do like the Zoolander, like,
Yeah. Bruce Deal.
if you think my t-shirt makes a statement, wait till you hear me roar.
Well,
Well
that's
done.
good.
And what's
Okay.
the t-shirt say today?
Today is Peace, Love, and Marketing.
Peace, love, and
Oh,
marketing.
nice.
Love
We're
it.
still keeping it clean and nice.
Yeah, love
I
it.
would say
Too
that's
early
very,
in our
that's
series,
very,
well, you know.
PG, yeah.
It's early in the season. Okay, I'm up. I may have two names, but don't get it twisted. I know exactly who I am.
Nice.
All right,
All right,
Alex.
the
you're up.
pressure's
Drum roll.
on. The
Drum roll.
bar is set high here.
Okay. But is it? Is it?
Well, coming from scratch, so I got to dig deep
But
into
it's-
the-
I'm
Sorry,
into
I
the
don't have
brand.
anything from the bar. Where the bar's too high, I'm too short. I can't. No? Okay.
I would say that for me, mine would be the heavier something is, the more I want to try and lift it.
All right, now say, I'm Alex Stonehouse.
All
And
right,
say
all
that.
right. I'm Alex Stonehouse. The heavier something is, the more I want to lift it.
Cheers. What are you drinking, Alex? I'm drinking, I think, a Malbec, a red.
Well, I'm not in a proper glass, but I
That's
did
okay.
transition to some
Oh.
red wine here. I've got a Cabernet in my coffee mug here.
I love it. And HK, I'm sorry, it's still the middle of the workday for you, but cheers anyway.
You know, I just think I should be relatively sober when I have a client meeting this evening, else there would be.
Okay.
It's 3:33. Come on.
There's some science around having one or two drinks actually makes you more creative and loosens you up and gets you to be more collaborative. So
Alex, I'm stone cold sober and I have to try really hard not to say bad words. I keep it clean.
That's fair.
You
It
know,
is a good
so
point. If we introduce alcohol to Heidi
that's
at this
very,
point,
that's fair.
we'll be having a lot of bleeps in our.
there will be one or two that Mac and I do where I'm sure we're completely off the track.
We'll probably
And
be
then we'll go and name some random companies or something. Like if we were to rebrand companies, what would it be? That'd be a funny one.
Ooh,
That would be a
that's
good
a
one.
fun premise, though.
Let's do it. And or taglines for companies. We could do that
Mhm.
one too. All right, Alex. So you love the startup space, right?
I
We
do.
know this about you. You're a member of the startup marketer community, really passionate member. Thank you. You're amazing. Love to read all of the stuff. We're actually publishing something of yours this week that you've written, and I loved it and very timely because you talked a little bit to us and our our members about the strategies, 3 different potential budgeting strategies as startup marketers. I think the
Yeah.
timing on this going in October is a good time, and this will probably release beginning of October. People are going to be thinking about their budgets. So let's start with your 3. I loved your sprinkles. Let's start with sprinkle.
Yeah. So this all came up actually because I was reading an article about the 4-burner strategy of what it means for your personal life. So it's you can have your family, you can have your faith, you can have your fitness and health, you can have your work, and how balancing all that goes. So that got me thinking on to how does that apply to marketing? And so I was thinking about all the different tactics and all the ways I've set things up over the years and different things that worked, different things that didn't. And it kind of boiled it down to these 3 strategies to use as examples to frame this concept of how to build a marketing budget and how to do your annual planning. And the first one was what you just said, the sprinkle strategy, which is just hypothetically, let's say you have $1 million budget. For some of us, $1 million budget is something that you would love to have. For some of us, it'll be 1/10 of what you have, depending on how big your company is. But just for round numbers, $1 million budget. The sprinkle strategy is basically the concept of take 100 chunks of 100 grand, find different things you believe in, and try them out throughout the year. So if you look at Q1, let's say you might be taking 25 grand of each of those 100 grand and testing something here, testing something there. You might be doing, let's try LinkedIn ads. Let's try doing some ads on YouTube. Let's try a sponsored event. Let's do a sponsored newsletter. It's taking all these things that are basically like levers or tactics that you can use and applying budget evenly throughout it. So you're touching all different kinds or all different people in all different places, wherever you think your audience might be. So it's a way to say, hey, I have a somewhat limited budget. I'm not Walmart or Amazon where I can just pay my way to any place I want to be. I have to be strategic to think about how exactly do I take this budget to reach the people I want to reach. And it can be a nice framework where especially for earlier stage companies. So maybe in this case, it's like you have $100,000 budget instead of $1 million total.
Right.
But it's saying, all right, I'm going to spread this out and I'm going to try a couple different things so I can figure out what actually works. Then when I start hitting it, let's say 2 or 3 of those hit over the course of the next year, then I know going into 2026, all right, those are the 3 places where we want to put a bunch of our money because we proved that they worked by sprinkling our budget on trying a bunch of different things. So that's essentially part number 1.
And then what's the downside of that strategy? Are there downsides?
So for me, the downside of that is you run the risk of not going deep enough in any one of those 10 areas or however many areas you choose. Like for a lot of different platforms or a lot of different channels, you'll actually start getting the traction as you're starting to run out of money. So it's like, had you had 3 times the budget, maybe it would have worked. But when you're saying, all right, I'm going to spread across all these different things, the lack of focus and the lack of depth you're able to get can be a problem. It also can be burdensome on your team if you only have a couple people, or if you're one of the marketing people who's doing all this by themselves. Managing 10 different things is a lot harder than managing 3 or 2 or whatever it might be. So it's great for learning, but it can be difficult to manage and can be a little bit too far spread out.
And then so that's your first strategy, is single strategy. What is your next one?
So the next one was what I call the temple strategy. So it's basically instead of having 10 that are 100 grand each, it's having 4 that are 250 grand each or 5 that are 200 grand each. So it's basically consolidating and making slightly bigger bets on what you think is going to work. So instead of saying, I don't know what's going to work, so let's try these, or not that you don't know at all, but let's try these 10 things. It's saying, I have a pretty good idea for what I think's work. I've done some research about what our customers want. We've talked to our audience. We know what they are interested in. Maybe we've already gone to some trade shows. We've been in the space before, or maybe at a different company, we come out with a bunch of industry experience, so we know where people hang out. It's putting that into basically bigger bets on a couple of different areas. And so the upside is you have a lot more potential to penetrate and to do that. What can happen that can be tough is that oftentimes you'll end up doing like one thing per quarter where you have a focus that shifts. And what can happen is you have these like peaks and valleys where when you're executing the thing, so let's say in Q1 you want to do this huge event where you invite everybody to fly out to Chicago and you're hosting all these clients and it's this awesome, amazing experience. It's in that little window. So you just dropped a quarter of your budget on this week-long span and figuring out, all right, well, how do I sustain that energy? How do I keep it going? Can be a little bit rocky if you don't have things in between those big temples as you go through the year.
Yeah, makes sense.
And then the last strategy, or last framework, is what I called the 4 burner strategy, which I got into a little bit at the beginning. And I've been seeing a lot of people sort of by accident talk about doing this, especially if people you see sharing on LinkedIn or kind of writing up case studies of what they did. And what it entails is really making one very big bet, educated bet on something. So you can basically at the end of the day say, I gave everything I had on this one big bet, which ends up taking, so out of the $1 million examples, let's say 700 grand of your budget. So it's 7/10, 70% of what you're doing. And then you maybe have another thing that's the temple size or slightly smaller, like 200K. And then you have maybe 1 or 2 things that are 50K, 100K sprinkled in there. So for that same $1 million budget, you have one huge bet, basically a medium-sized bet, and then a couple small sprinkles at the end. And I've seen people talk a lot about this lately with like investments in their video strategy or different things like that, where they'll say like, hey, we've been around for 4 years. We're busting our ass. Throw a swear in there for you, Heidi. And we're trying as hard as we can to grow, and to like the things that we've been doing we're growing at 7%, 12%, 15%, but to get to where we want to go, we need to do something more drastic. We need to do something bigger. We need to take more risk. And this is a strategy that allows you to do that, but do it thoughtfully and do it in a meaningful way where you have a strong hypothesis about what's going to work and you're putting a lot of money behind it, but you're doing it in a very, often a simple way, but a very effective way where you're putting all your energy and your money in the same place. And so to use the video example, I'll send it to you after because I'm blanking on the name of the person who wrote about this, but she posted recently about how she'd literally been somewhere for 4 or 5 years And then at the beginning, like 6 months ago, they were basically like, you know what, enough is enough. They invested, but from the quality, I would guess $100,000 in hiring a company to help make some commercials for them and do some videos for them. And then all of the rest of their budget, they just put into essentially YouTube ads, digital video ads. And we're like, if this is going to work, it's going to work through the strategy. Because otherwise, like, this is our final play essentially. And I'll send you the graphs. What they pulled up it's stunning. It's like the first 2 months, they were probably nervous because the first 2 months you're like, are we getting traction? It looks like I think we're getting traction here. And then by month like 3, 4, 5, it's mind blowing how much they started to blow up, and it affected their organic numbers. It affected like how they were showing up on paid search. It affected all these different things by just saying, hey, we're doubling down on this video strategy. We believe in it. We have leadership. The CEO's in on it. Everybody's moving in the same direction, and we're committed to doing it right. And that focus allowed them to really push through and do some amazing campaigns. And so I've been lucky enough to be able to do that in some previous roles in the past and have it really pan out. And it's something I continue to try to bring back to the work I do every day is like, all right, how do we capitalize on the thing we believe the most in and where we can make the biggest impact within these budget constraints that we do have in the reality of working in the startup space, especially nowadays.
So playing on that $1 million, is there like, I don't know, a stage of a company that would be more likely to give you the keys to the car to allow you to choose the sprinkle? And I've heard that called experiments. And
Yeah.
I'm old school. I'm an OG marketer. I've been doing this much longer than a decade and a half, as is Mac. And I heard this phrase last week, like, oh, it's not part of the experiment budget. I did a little bit of a WTF because as a marketing leader, I'm like, I got to tell you, I'm so old school. If I had somebody come to me and like, I want to do an experiment, it doesn't feel like it has conviction. So
yes,
is it the size of a company? Is it stage where they are? Like, and how much autonomy do you take them all in and show the exec team, like, here are the three we have? I mean, your sprinkle is, I think, Mac and I spray and pray. I think that we called it back in the day.
It is.
Right?
It is. Yeah.
Like, so I would love to understand that a little bit. Help me understand, like, go for the gusto or like how.
It's a really great question. And I think a lot of people, when they have some hesitancy coming to this topic in general, because basically everybody has to do a marketing plan or marketing budget as part of just existing in this world. And some people create it because they believe deeply in it and they plan to stick to it for the best they can for at least 6 months. Maybe they redo it halfway through the year, but they have a plan and they're going to stick to it. Some people do it just because finance told them they have to do it and they have to get some numbers down on paper. And in my experience, that second way is not the best way to do it. You want as much alignment as you can get with your CEO and your CFO on all of this stuff. So communicating to them, this is what I believe will work, this is why I believe it'll work, is huge. And the other component of it too is saying, like, if we don't do this, this is what I think will happen. So like, if we just do what we did last year, if we just recreate the playbook from 2023 to 2024, we'll probably get similar results to 2023 and 2024. And if you're growing at 50% or 100% year over year, that's awesome. Keep doing it.
Yeah.
But if you're not, then there's something that is going to need to change. And so communicating that with them is like speaking their language of the business results is huge, because like you can talk all you want about like your marketing KPIs and exactly. And specifically about how you brought your cost per click down and you did these things, which I'm all for optimizing to increase your efficiency. But when we're talking about that level of budgeting, thinking through the actual business results, recurring revenue, all these different things is going to be extremely important. And then when it comes to the size of the company, I think what's going to vary the most is just how much impact you have as an individual, based on what level you're at in the company. So, I mean, I think if you're a CMO at a fairly large growth stage company, that's a few, like Series C, Series D, like you can still have a tremendous amount of power in that situation and really kind of put your influence down. If you're like director level, things like that, it could be a little bit harder. You're probably going to want to influence your CMO, and then your CMO will want to go influence in that way. But at some of the earlier stage or smaller companies, where I'm at right now, there's 60 people, and there's nobody in the company I feel like I can't talk to if I want to talk to them about something. And so I feel like you shouldn't hide these ideas in your head. Like, these ideas should be shared and should be discussed. And you might not get 100% of what you want. Like, if you come up with a plan and say, hey, this is what my ideal plan looks like, you should, and they have an objection, you should discuss it. Like, this isn't personal, really. It feels personal because we care about it so much and we go so deep into it, but what we're all trying to achieve the same thing. And so if they say, hey, I agree with X, Y, and Z, let's take 800 grand and do those things, but I disagree on what you said for that last 200, a good partner in that will say, why did you want to do those things? Because I want to understand why you want to do them. And then even if I disagree with the way you're going about it, let's talk about a way to achieve that same thing with that same budget. So sometimes they'll shoot down like the tactic. Like, if you said, I want to sponsor with the last 200 grand a NASCAR car because I want people in that demographic to see who we are, they might say, well, let's not blow it all on a NASCAR race and let's think about another way to achieve the same thing. But like, you're starting to have the conversation, even if the idea you came with from the front isn't the right exact idea.
Which one is your favorite? I'm so sorry, Mac.
No, I was just going to ask that same question.
I'm reading your mind today. Like, we're just, you can just sit there and I'll just read your mind.
It's funny. I anticipated that question. And then I was like, oh man, did I like miss something when I finished that article? Because my real answer is like a mix. It's like a slightly lesser version of the 4 burners idea. So like, I've had a lot of success doing something around like 40 to 50% of your budget and something you've proven works. And then you have a lot of room to experiment with the other 50%. And so the 70% that I put in the option may have been a little extreme, but I think that's where I tend to land. And when I think through the places where I've been successful, it's like Xometry is a great example of that. It was a fascinating business because it was actually a double-sided marketplace where we had essentially a B2C movement that was like, anybody could come use this technology that had revolutionized the space by making quoting, 3D printing, and CNC machining products take literally 10 seconds when it used to take like 2 days. Like, it used to be a person would look at your design and then write up a PDF and send it back, and it was just horrible. They changed it to where you could upload your file, and in 10 seconds, it'd be like, this is how much it's going to cost. Here's the different materials you can choose from. Like, it was amazing. But anyway, so our clients were everyone from Blue Origin and SpaceX and NASA and these companies doing high precision parts, down to somebody like making robotics in their garage or making Christmas gifts for their spouse or whatever. So that we had all different kinds of users in the space, but the primary sort of motion of getting people into the tool was through Google. So like, it was immediate intent. They could buy that same day. There was almost no sales cycle except for some of the major accounts like the SpaceXs of the world. But it was basically like, if you found us on Google, there was a pretty good chance you were going to buy in the next 1 to 3 days. And so we kind of cranked everything towards like speeding up that process. And so for that example, we basically had half our budget was on AdWords. Like, we were spending 6 figures every month on like pushing that as hard as we could to get people in the door until we essentially kind of hit a wall on that. And then that became, all right, well, how do we ramp up our strategy to go beyond that? But then it can be completely different if you're on a sales cycle that's 3 months to 6 months in big enterprise sales. And so like, that same strategy probably wouldn't work for somebody who needs to take more of a demand gen strategy and build that truth over time, rather than saying, hey, this is the thing you can buy today. It's more like, hey, I want you to trust me today so that when you're ready to buy in 9 months, we have a relationship that's being built. So it can vary a lot depending on sort of how you sell and what your sales cycle looks like.
Let me ask you a question. So you started to go down this path about selling the vision on which strategy you want to implement. Yeah. Let's go more into those conversations, right? Because obviously the CEO and the CFO are extraordinarily important in that they are the ones that are going to approve it. But do you build coalition around the other C-suite before you go in and ask, or do you tell after the fact?
So I do think that's very important. particularly with the CRO, if you have one. So making sure that sales and marketing aligned is going to be number one. If you have, like at Forj, we've had a chief client officer before, and so they manage all the client relationships, and making sure you're aligned with them also is extremely important. So having what basically anybody under the GTM umbrella on the same page first makes it much easier to then go have that financial conversation. But to me, that's something that is beyond budgeting. That's all the time, right?
Yeah.
So I think I'm a big believer in just observing what's been happening like the last couple of years, that I think marketing is becoming, or not becoming, but you need to know more about sales than you might have 10 years ago. And I think sales is needing to know more about marketing than they have in the past. It may not be that they do any of it, or they are not writing copy, or they're not creating digital assets and all that stuff, but understanding what we're doing, why we're doing it, how we're doing it, and where they fit into the process is huge. And you can think of something as simple as like, oh, we're gonna do we're at Forj, where I'm at now, we do a annual research report. We call it the State of Member Experience. It's all about members of communities. What is their experience like with the different associations and different groups that they're part of? And we do it every year, and it's something that people look forward to. They want to see it. They're interested in reading it. And there's a few kind of things we sprinkle in there that involve intent. So like, are you in a place to be building a community? Are you in a place to be building your membership? We ask those kind of questions, and we ask them because we actually want to be helpful. So we want to know if you're at a place where you want to talk about these things. And then that's where the relationship between marketing and sales comes in. Because if somebody says, we're not pushing it down your throat, but if you say yes, like, hey, great timing, yes, I actually do want this, we're set up to like very efficiently handle that process. So it just becomes like from the top down, from strategy all the way down to tactically, how are you handling all that stuff? That relationship is incredibly important.
Do you think that marketers are more interested in learning about sales, or vice versa?
Ooh,
Man.
dangerous question.
Here's
And
what
we're
I'll,
just speaking
yeah.
in generalities,
Yeah.
right?
No specificity.
Here's what I this may be my personal opinion, but this is what I would say. Marketers are fascinated by sales, but don't like want to go through the pain of doing it. And by pain, I mean it's hard. Like it takes a lot of focus and intensity, and you have to have like some thick skin sometimes, and it can be repetitive sometimes. Like it takes some things that a lot of marketers aren't necessarily that great with. So I think, like, from my perspective, I have a tremendous amount of respect for people that are in sales, and especially when I'm in an office setting or seeing them do some of the things that they do that they have a lot of success with. I'm kind of in awe, because I'm like, I don't know if I could get through a week of that. Like, I respect so much of what you just did, because it seems so hard. And that might just be because I've been doing marketing for 15 years, so it feels easier for me. But it's what I chose on purpose because I enjoy it. But yeah, it's, for me, I think I'm fascinated by it, and I'm always learning more about it. And part of it is self-serving, because I want to help them have more success and make it easier for them. So like, the more I know what's working for them, the easier it is for me to do my job and to help smooth that process.
I think marketers sell more than they give themselves credit for, though. It's
I think so too.
I think I agree with you. Sales is hard, but marketing is hard too. And not everybody is a marketer, although they want to be, or they think they are.
Well,
You know
so
what?
that's
I'm going to
the
pause you
thing.
both. I'm actually going to pause you.
Yeah.
We take a quick break and thank our sponsor. I want to come back and talk specifically about this topic, though, because I think this is the number one. We know it's the number one challenge for sales. We know it's the number one challenge for marketers, and we know it's the number one referee point that CEOs have to take on. So let's thank our sponsor. We'll be right back in about 30 seconds.
We love startups, but marketing for them can be hard. Whether you're a founder, a seasoned marketer, or a recent marketing grad, Startup Marketer is here to help. Startup Marketer, or SUM for short, is a first-of-its-kind marketing ecosystem designed by startup marketers with experience working with over 100 startups. We understand the unique challenges you face because we've been there, and we're sharing our cheat codes for success. With bespoke marketing templates, on-demand courses, interactive sessions with experts, and a vibrant community of like-minded professionals, SUM combines accelerator muscle with community wisdom. You can even book an expert to troubleshoot or ideate in real time with senior strategists and senior doers. In a world where marketing is a critical element for startup success, SUM equips you with everything you need to drive growth and stay ahead. So join SUM today and elevate your marketing game. Visit thestartupmarketer.com.
We are back with Alex Stonehouse, and he is the director of marketing at Forj. And we are going to talk more about the relationship with sales and marketing, and even product and marketing, right? I think that's the other one. I always say is the three-legged stool, right? It's product, sales, and marketing is unified go-to-market. Obviously, there's other players and a lot of people that are involved in go-to-market, but to me, those are the three big ones. But I want to keep going on what you were the path you were just going down, which is the relationship. You've built an incredible reputation in the marketing world, right? You found a way to partner with sales. How have you done it?
That's a wonderful question. And I think honestly, I benefited a lot during my time at Xometry in that when I got hired there, my boss there was Bill Cronin, who was at the time the VP of marketing. And while I was there, he got promoted to CRO. So he was overseeing the sales function and the marketing function. And that was a wonderful insight into just the day-to-day of what he's thinking about as the leader of both of those teams, into what that team is dealing with day-to-day and how we work together. But in more recent years, what I've really found is that building relationships with individual people on that team is extremely important. So it can vary a lot depending on your size, again, of like, if you have 100-person sales team where you have 10 directors and they all have different verticals or different regions, you're probably not going to get to know all 100 people on the team super well, but you can get to know all 10 of those directors incredibly well. Or if you're at a company that has 3, 4, 5, 6 AEs, maybe a few BDRs or SDRs, there's no reason you can't know all of those people well enough individually where you can Slack them once a week. You have some funny anecdotes together. You can build that relationship on things that aren't even necessarily related to work, so that when you do come up against something that impacts the bottom line or impacts a deal or impacts something that you have to deal with at work, it's that much easier to be on the same page to build that relationship. So it's kind of a combination of that philosophical belief and understanding of that you're both moving in the same direction. But also it's just a huge part of it is building those personal relationships, which they're usually great at on the sales side.
They are, because that's their job.
Yeah.
I got the biggest compliment recently from a few women that used to be on a sales team that I worked at in a company I worked at about 12 years ago. And they said, and I quote, and I think this is something that it never really occurred to me, but they said the very best thing that I ever did for them is never surprise them. They never read about something in the press. They never went on the website and heard something. They didn't walk into a meeting, get blindsided. And I think that's part of forming a relationship, right? In forming that trust is being super transparent. The other thing that I've heard, and I have to say, I've heard this from a lot of founders, and I'm curious about, so that is just an aside. And I love these women, Betsy, Michelle, guys, phenomenal salespeople. But that was it hadn't really occurred to me that I was doing that. I just thought that was part of, what you do. But I think that's one thing that tangible that marketers can do is never surprise sales, right? Don't let their customers read about something. Make sure if there's something bad, get in front of it. If there's something good, make sure they know about it and they can utilize it within their own programs. And I think marketers would benefit from hearing that more, right? Don't surprise sales. But I will say something that I'm interested in that I've heard founders say is that marketers don't own their losses. They spend all their time talking about their wins. So I'm going to pause on that because I think that also is part of the transparency and the part of relationship building, right? Sales misses their numbers, but marketing's like, well, it wasn't our fault. Come on, we're one team. This is one team. We should all own the losses. We should all own our parts in the losses and figure out ways to drive coalition around the wins.
Mac, you're going to love this on this topic. I literally have a post-it note right here. And it's what it says is, don't justify shit that isn't working. So you maybe bleep that.
Okay, so listen.
Don't justify stuff that isn't working. There we go.
Listen more, talk less. I've got 6. I won't tell you what they all say, but that's one of them. But yes, I love that. It's a good reminder.
So
Mine says buy more booze.
it's I mean, you can never go wrong with that strategy.
No.
So,
Well, I think there's also another thing at play here is that unfortunately you do have founders that naturally pit sales and marketing against each other. And then you have to work twice as hard to do all of the collaborating and all of the things. And, you know, the advice I give to young marketers pretty much every day is actually, if you are wired and if you're willing, go take a seat in marketing, take a role in marketing, try it on for size, and learn both disciplines, because my career took a game-changing, granted, I was voluntold in a sales leadership job and I love data, but my career became very, very different, even in how I was able to coexist with my sales leadership as a marketing leader when I actually came from the perspective of I've been on that side too.
Yeah.
And understanding, to your point, Mac, about owning the losses, hey, it might have performed amazingly, but it didn't perform amazingly that we had customers falling all over themselves to buy from us. And I think that's one of the challenges that marketers have, is the love affair with pretty pictures and design and creative campaigns. And as much as sometimes we don't love the data, it could be a beautiful campaign and quite honestly just not, it can't calculate with a sale, translate into sales. And we've talked a lot on this show about, unfortunately, I feel from the seat that I sit in, and again, I've sat on both sides, is that marketing leadership is exited before sales leadership in times of trouble and sorrow. They just are. And I think part of it is because the marketing leader doesn't take responsibility, doesn't partner and give a reason for a sales leader to say, hey, we're a package. We weren't firing at the top of the funnel, but we also were a little broken at the bottom of the funnel, and we own this together.
Yeah, it's funny. They're not funny at all, really, but it's a little bit of a catch-22 where I think because the market for like the job market for marketers has been a little rocky on and off, depending on the year you're talking about over the last decade or so.
Yeah.
There's this impulse, or this, like, you feel like you have to justify everything that you're doing and say that everything was a success, and I spent this money and every single thing I spent $1 on was awesome and it's the best. And I think that comes out of that fear of, like, what if I admit that we did these 10 things and 5 of them didn't work the way that I thought they were going to do? Then I'm at risk, and I'm at risk personally as well as my team and everybody around me. But the catch is that in order to actually have long-term sustainable success, you have to actually find those things that aren't working, root them out, push them to the side, and stop doing them, and then have a plan, figure out the things that are going to replace them, and then that actually drive the revenue, that actually support sales, that actually do this over time. And nobody gets let go from a company that's grown, doubled in size year over year for the last 5 years. It just doesn't happen. So, like, the reality is you're best served figuring out, what can I do to have a plan to fix this if it's broken? But it's so hard to admit, hey, this thing that I put so much time and effort and energy in, and that I really cared about, and that I bragged about 3 months ago, is actually broken. It's a very difficult place to be in.
It's difficult, but doesn't that build your internal credibility, though? When you're willing,
I think 100%.
And look, nobody bats 500. Is that the right term? Am I saying that right?
Yeah.
Nobody bats 500. Yeah.
Even Tony Gwynn is batting like 390, and he's.
I was going to say, but at the very best, right? Look at there's still errors that are made. There are still losses that they accrue. Like, even the best athletes in the world are going to have off days and off months and off seasons.
Yeah.
But I think you said that really beautifully, and I hope our listeners take that away, which is, like, it is a tough conversation. Nobody likes to talk about failure, but we lose as a team, we win as a team too. So I think when marketing takes a lot of credit, they often take a lot of marketing credit. They don't also take they don't bring in all of their peers in the industry or in the company in with that as well. Yeah. I think there are two sides to this. You got to admit failure, and failure doesn't happen alone. You got to, when there's success, great, doesn't happen alone. I think that there has to be more we in marketing.
Yeah.
We're one team. We're one company. We may be marketing, but when sales misses, we all missed.
Oh, 100%.
We miss. So I like, Heidi, I like your point. You're right. marketing is usually the first to go, marketing and HR, right? Like that's where the cost cuts are going to come. So it behooves us as marketers to build the bridges that, in the frictioned world, if that's even a word, that we live in, which is the natural friction that exists within the go-to-market. There's a reason it's not all in one bucket, right? There's 3 different areas, I think. But there's power that comes in when you can build coalition, and it can be we, not I and them.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the other key is coming with a plan. So it's totally okay to admit something didn't work. What's not okay is to say, hey, it didn't work. And like, that stinks, huh? Like, tough nuggies for us, I guess. Like, you have to come in and be like, well, this didn't work, and here's what I would recommend us trying next. Yeah. And so like, and doing that along with your partners in sales, your partners in product, that all is extremely important. But it's building the plan and having the next idea, the next thing you want to try.
Going back to your sprinkle strategy that you talked about, maybe for some people that are starting in a company new. So one of the things we are really going to talk about a lot this season is you're a new marketing leader. Now what, right? So in the last episode that will come out shortly, we interviewed a CMO that was like, and the topic is, so you want to be a CMO, do you? Be careful what you wish for. But building coalition and building relationships and knocking these silos down is a huge part of any marketing leader's job. So going back to the conversation about the sprinkle, having a marketing leader that says, I don't know, we've got to test to find out. I think there's a lot of power in that, because what you're saying is, you're allocating this budget to me. I may have a sprinkle strategy for the first quarter that I need to test some stuff first. I'm not willing to go all in on the big idea out of the gate. I'm new. Maybe that is approach that some marketing leaders could take to build that sense of trust with their peers. Actually, I think that whole long rant.
I think you're absolutely right. And I think it's funny because I've bounced around to a few, not bounced around, but strategically moved around to a few different companies that were in totally different industries. And so I think, and anyone who's in marketing who wants to do that, you should totally feel free to do that. It's really interesting and rewarding and keeps things fresh. But a lot of times you can get in this trap where you think, I've mastered this industry that I'm in, this customer base, this ICP, however you want to think about it. And I'm just going to take that playbook, which is perfected, and I'm going to come over here and apply it to this new company. And it's going to be smooth sailing, and I'm going to only work 20 hours a week because I already figured it all out. And like, that is not reality. And so saying, hey, I've achieved some of these successes. You should trust me as a marketer because I have a good feel for these things. And I've proven I can think critically about what makes sense for our company, our audience, these things. But what I did over there in a B2C situation may not work over here in an enterprise B2B situation. Right. So while the skills I built there are totally transferable, the channels and the strategies and the way we talk to customers and all these things might be totally different. So being open about that and saying, hey, I think this would work. I've tried it before and it seems like it would apply to our audience here, our client base here. Let's try it out, is a great way to kind of get those things rolling and see what skills from your last jobs you can pull over to the new one.
Can I jump in and ask another question about budgets, because we've been spending time there and I think that's super interesting. Are you a fan of, or are you, in the opportunities you've had, has it been a situation where you've walked in and you've driven the dollar investment? Like, hey, this is what our KPIs, this is where we're looking to go this year. This is what I really need to make that happen. Mm-hmm. Or is it asking dad for money to go to the movies and some popcorn? Like, they're like, here's what you have. I always call it my marketing peanut. Here's your marketing peanut. Go figure out how you're going to do way more with less. Like, what have your situations kind of been? Has been one or the other, or the dreaded just-in-time budget, right? Like, you have to ask for every penny as you go.
I've been lucky enough to not have to do the latter, the just-in-time situation, and so
I've seen it. I haven't had to deal with it personally, really, but I've seen it.
Me neither.
Yeah. I've definitely seen it, and so I have friends who've experienced it. I've been lucky enough to be that the startups that I've been at are through the seed stage at least, so they have some cash in the bank, and that typically it's a portion of that gets allocated to marketing, and so there's some push and pull over how much of that, what percentage that should be. based on how much revenue you have coming in the door, how aggressive your growth goals are, what your projections look like with your data team and the finance team. So there's a lot of moving parts on it. But in my experience, it's usually tied to some combination of like what the CAC or the metrics are around acquisition costs already are that we know, like up until this point, this is what they are, and what the growth numbers or the projections are for the next 12 months, 24 months, like the next couple periods down the road. And so again, I'll go back to Xometry for a great example. We had, I think when I joined, we were probably just hitting into sort of the 8-figure number in terms of annual revenue. So we were probably $11-12 million a year pacing wise. And the conversation from there was how do we get to 25, which is a huge milestone for startups, $25 million a year.
Yes, it is.
And then 50 was kind of there, but the real next one was 100, because 100 is the number you get to if you want to IPO or you want to do any of that. 100 is the number to go to. So all our conversations were basically, how do we double to get to 25? And then how do we double in a way that gets us to have been building a foundation that allows us to go from 25 to 100? Because a lot of companies will blow every tactic, everything they have. They'll burn their audience. They'll spam people with emails. They'll do all kinds of crazy stuff to get to the 25. And then when they're at the 25, they're like, dang, I think we just, like, we did ourselves a disservice getting to the 25, and we didn't set ourselves up to get to the 100.
Because you didn't build something scalable.
Exactly.
Repeatable and scalable and predictable.
Yeah. And so by hiring more and more people or throwing that people at the problem, that you get into that tough dynamic. So all of that is to say, I've been lucky enough to work with people who have a fairly clear vision of what the next several years look like from a growth perspective and what they want to achieve from an overall company goal standpoint. And then often we can just back into kind of something within the range of normal for like what percentage of a company at this stage should be using for budget. And it, again, can vary a lot, like especially now compared to 2015, 2017, like the growth at all costs era was, you could get a pretty dang big budget or a pretty high percentage of annual revenue for your budget based on the way people are giving out money back then. And that is not in like the venture capital and private equity world, that is not quite the same anymore. So
true.
I think our percentage of budget in comparison to revenue has gone down recently.
Do you think that's right? Do you think that's the right way to?
So what I think is right about it is, I think there should be some focus on ROI, profitability, efficiency that I've always kind of had in my mind anyways, and the people I've worked with have always leaned a little more conservative in that sense. So we weren't like just throwing money to throw it ever, but I think that's really tightened up a little bit, and I think it's closer to running just a good business, right? Like there's a lot of companies that are startups and they're in the SaaS space and they have VC money, but they're operating like a business who wants to grow 20%, 30%, 40% a year and be a sustainable business for the next 10, 15 years. And the founder wants to continue to be in charge and run it. And then there's companies who have a 3 to 5 year exit plan and want to sell. And so, and sometimes it can be both. You think you want to be the 15-year one, you blow up and you get an opportunity to sell, and that becomes the way you go, or vice versa.
More often than not, around.
Yeah.
We really want the 3 to 5, but here we are 12 years later, 13 years later.
Totally. But that can still be very satisfying and like kind of lucrative or sustaining in its own way. So yeah, it's a really good question, but there's a lot of interest in it.
What's your favorite part of the startup marketing that you do today? What's your favorite thing to sink your teeth into?
That's a really good question. I am in a funny spot because I am a big believer that marketing is both an art and a science. And so I get pulled between sort of like the data and the analytics part of it and the optimization part of it. And then also the creative aspects where you get to express yourself a little bit, you get to experiment with new things, share your message, and get to see the reaction of people on the other end and how it's resonating with them. My big thing that I'm just starting to dabble with now that I'm really into is video stuff. I think it's on a lot of the platforms that are out there right now, it's the move they're all trying to go. And so if you want to get traction, I think video is huge right now. And for me, it's something that I'm like interested in photography and movies, all that kind of thing. And so while I'm not the next Tarantino or Scorsese or whatever over here, I think it's really fun to get behind the camera, to interview people, your subject matter experts who work for you, to do something like this. That's a podcast where you have a platform to actually talk about the things you care about, to share your voice, to connect with people on the other end. And so I've been doing a lot of that lately, whereas the last year or so, we've done a lot more that's writing-based, research-based. And I think we're taking the things we've learned from that and really taking it into the audio and visual medium, which has been just really interesting and satisfying for me. And at the end of the day, what I love, and I'm sure you're getting some of this now as well, with a startup marketer, is people coming in and saying, "Oh, I read this thing on your site, it was amazing," or "Hey, I saw so-and-so talk about this, and like I couldn't believe what I was hearing because I've been thinking that for 5 years." And those are the type of things where at the end of the day, it's all driving the business forward. But when you hear it resonating with people and that feedback coming back, that is just really satisfying. Like, I think we're all storytellers at heart in this industry. And so when it's like being a stand-up comedian and getting someone to laugh at your jokes, when your thing that you said and you crafted and you wrote hits with them on the other end, it really is satisfying.
Tell us what's next for Forj. What's next for you and the company at Forj?
Yeah, so Forj is in a really great spot right now. We just rolled out a new platform called Journey by Forj, which is really reimagining the community and learning space. So the majority of our clients are associations and professional networks, but we also work with a lot of companies in the healthcare space and some other industries. And we're taking kind of all the perks and the benefits of the traditional learning management systems, the courses, certifications, things like that, and bringing them together with community platform in a single place. So it's been really cool to see people's reaction to that. And in a space where those things have been siloed in that, especially in the association world for 10, 15, 20 years, seeing people realize like, oh, we could be providing this like kind of one-stop shop experience, this one solution, this single solution for our members is awesome. But also we could be streamlining what we're doing on the back end. So instead of having to manage two clunky platforms, we can have one that's much smoother and it's all in the same place and all that. So it's been a great product to market for and a great company to work at. So props to everybody who I work with if they're listening to this.
They're listening.
Do you have a product marketer? We've been talking a lot about product marketing.
So I'll give her a shout out. Christine Moore. She's awesome. She is probably we're pretty tight. So if there's someone's listening, she'll be the one who hears this.
Hi, Christine. Thank you for stepping butt at Ford.
So she's great, and she has been really instrumental. So she started after me, but she's been really instrumental in kind of taking us up a level. So product marketing I've done a lot of brand marketing. I've done a lot of different things in marketing, honestly, but the one that I haven't done a ton of is tying that like technical product components, like really mapping that out, working super closely with the product team, and then fusing that into the marketing language. So often I've been in the place where I'm like, this is the product's set, let's roll it out. Like, I know what it is, let's go. And because we're still adding all kinds of new features and building this really great product, while we have a great product that people can use now, we're adding even more to it. And she is instrumental in communicating those changes, all those different releases, all that messaging to the market. And so honestly, I would say if I was starting a company and I was thinking, all right, who are my first 5 employees? A product marketer would probably be someone I would hire before a generalist, even though I am a generalist and I love my fellow generalists.
Amen. Everybody hear that? Amen.
Yeah, it's huge, especially for someone in the tech space, the SaaS space. It's very important.
That was a bit of a loaded question. I apologize because we've been talking about every conversation. And we couldn't agree with you more. We were high-fiving.
Yes, we're high-fiving.
Yeah. And speaking of building coalitions and being a person who goes between teams, product marketers are like the epitome of that. And they also
I agree.
reach over to...
They're the glue. I think they're the glue between the go-to-market. I agree.
Totally.
I
And
agree.
they often touch like the CTO to the tech.
Mhm.
They touch all that stuff.
They do. They do. Alex, I can't thank you enough for joining us. Huge member within the startup marketer community. So if anyone listening is part of the startup marketer community, you can see Alex's writing. He's involved in the community very heavily. He's on the board, so he definitely is kicking me in the butt, which is a good and just trying to make the whole ecosystem stronger. Huge name in the DC space. So if you don't know Alex, how can people find you, Alex?
Yeah, LinkedIn is the place to go. Alex Stonehouse, you'll find me. There's not a ton of Stonehouses out there in the world, so you will find me. Definitely hit me up, connect, love to chat. I'm pretty active there. I'm doing a little experiment where I post every day for the next month or so we'll see. And I'll keep going if it's working, so you'll see me active on there for sure.
Well, cheers to you, Alex. Thank you for being a startup marketer. Here's to more success for you, and thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much. This was
Thanks,
great.
Alex. Nice to meet you, man.
You
See
too.
ya.
We will be back with another episode next week, but Alex, thank you. Bye, everyone.
Peace.